Ow! Who even hangs pots and pans from the ceiling? That is so dumb. Just need to cut my sandwich in half and... that's gonna leave a mark. Now, where are those stairs? Found him. Forget the stupid monster. The most dangerous thing in Bird Box is the second story. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Film Theory, forcefully opening your eyes to the mind-scarring truths hidden in all your favorite movies. So Netflix is really hitting out of the park recently, isn't it? Between the choose-your-own-adventure movie Bandersnatch and the totally not a Quiet Place ripoff Bird Box, there's been a lot of bingeable theory fodder coming out of the ol'... And while Bandersnatch might seem like the one that's more up my alley, considering the video game theme and all that, it's actually Bird Box that I want to tackle first, mostly because the movie had one question that I think we all want answered: what the heck was the monster? To catch you up, Bird Box follows a group of people trying to survive a worldwide catastrophe in which people are driven to kill themselves after they witness something. In order to survive, you have to keep your eyes shut, or else wear a blindfold, leading to this iconic imagery from the movie and all these other really dumb Bird Box challenge videos on YouTube. It's a really cool concept. Just like noise was the dangerous element from A Quiet Place, sight is the thing that gets you killed in Bird Box. But the frustrating thing about the movie is that you never actually get to see the monster. It's never made explicitly clear what exactly is driving everyone to this point of madness. So that is my goal today, to use all the clues that we see and don't see throughout the movie to rip off the blindfold and expose the Bird Box monster once and for all. Let's look at what we know. From the opening moments, it's made clear that when most people see whatever it is that they're seeing, they lose control and, within a few seconds, look for the nearest garbage truck to stand in front of, burning car to hop into, or pane of glass to leap through. And this effect isn't just limited to in-person appearances. Greg, in the highest stakes game of FNAF ever, watches security cameras, sees the thing, and immediately knocks his own block off. It's important to note, though, that this isn't true for everyone. About midway through the movie, we learn from Gary that there are some people who've seen it and don't immediately off themselves.
These psychos from Northwood.
It's a mental institution for the criminally insane.
They took us outside and they forced our eyes open so that we would have to look at the creatures.
It seems like all these people are either criminals or were already insane prior to looking at the thing. And rather than dying, they're instead left to worship it, serving as prophets trying to trick or force everyone around them to open their eyes and behold this thing of beauty.
Sorry that you didn't get to see. It is beautiful. So beautiful. It shall cleanse the world.
Though beauty must be in the eyes of the beholder, since these are the images that Gary draws of the thing after he's seen it. The other reactions we get from people who see the thing include,
"Oh my god, what the f*** is that?"
and
You're just so bad.
it's not outright terror, it's just more confusion. And lastly, we can deduce that whatever it is does have a physical form, considering that we actively see it casting shadows and setting off a car's proximity sensors in an early scene. But it also has limited ability to actually interact with the world, considering it can't open doors or pull off blindfolds itself, instead relying on its devotees to do the work for it. So that's a lot of information, but where does it leave us? Well, the movie gives us a list of possible explanations to test in the form of Charlie.
You got world religion and mythology that's full of mentions of demons or spirit creatures that takes on the form of your worst fears or your deepest sadness or your greatest loss.
Except we know that that isn't true of the Bird Box creature, considering the early responses of,
"Oh my god, what the f*** is that?"
and
You're just so bad.
those responses don't scream, "Oh, this is my greatest fear," or "Oh, this is the worst loss I've ever experienced." More just like, "Oh, this is it, huh?" So that one might not have worked out, but don't worry, Charlie has a lot more hypotheses that we can put to the test.
You got the Akamana, you got the Barrios Devas from ancient Zoroastrian legend. You got the Surgot from ancient Christian occult beliefs. You got the Hulajin from China. You got the Puka from Celtic mythology. All different names, but the same thing. The end of us.
Man, Charlie, I know it's the end of the world, and I know this is all for your book, but you're even more melodramatic than I am. Many of the entities you just mentioned don't mean the end of us. Plus, you're lumped together a lot of spiritual things that are very different and all very wrong for the situation that you're currently in. So let's quickly knock them off the list one by one. Akamana comes from the Zoroastrian faith, one of the oldest religions that are still in practice today, with its origins in the Middle East. And according to the Encyclopedia of Demons and world religions and culture, he's the personification of sensual desire and lust. He corrupts your morals and is said to cause people to sit back and watch as evil prevails. So if everyone in Bird Box were busy getting their woohoo on in the streets, then maybe he'd be the one at work here, but clearly that's not the case, and therefore he is clearly not our demon. Surgat is another one that he mentions that is also really easy to eliminate. Coming out of the Christian occult, he's known as the one who opens all locks, which directly speaks to his demonic power, the ability to open any lock in the world. This makes him a fantastic Mr. Beast to get possessed by if you're clumsy with your keys, but definitely not the culprit of a movie where the entity that's killing everyone is befuddled by a simple door handle. Moving on, the Puka is an Irish mythological creature that shapeshifts into different animals and plays pranks on humans, like turning into a black horse and taking people for a spooky, scary ride. But beyond that, it doesn't appear to be all that violent. Seeing it certainly doesn't cause immediate death, and there are plenty of stories where the Puka actually gives good luck. Another easy elimination. Which leaves us with the Chinese Hulijing, and honestly, this one seemed like a good fit at first. The Hulijing are nine-tailed Chinese fox spirits with the ability to shapeshift, often taking the form of a person's dead relatives. They're able to make people believe the opposite of what's true, like a spirit who convinces you to take off your blindfold and see them because they're beautiful. And they're immortal, but that immortality requires them to consume human souls. A lot of things could really work here in the case of Bird Box. It seems like you can make a solid case for him being our mystery entity, except here's the rub. They can pass through walls. Well, send another possibility through the shredder. So Charlie in the movie took a lot of shots and missed them all. Maybe he should abandon that writing project of his and instead go back to his former job. Seems like he had a lot more success there.
I'm T.S. A. We handle shit.
So now it's my turn. And honestly, after looking at all the various behaviors of the Bird Box creature, no one explanation can truly encapsulate it all. That said, I do think that we can pinpoint the two lores that have combined to create the apocalypse that we see in Bird Box. For the first, let's look again at Gary's pictures. At first glance, these just seem to be a bunch of random spooky pictures, but upon closer inspection, you can definitely see some key themes emerging. First, the idea of exploding eyeballs, which is his artistic representation of the process of the pupil fracturing every time someone sees these entities. So with those pictures eliminated, as well as the ones of just generally scary or screaming faces, this is what we're left with. A bunch of pictures of monsters. Let's call them Horny, Tentacle Face, and Elephant Nose. Let's focus on Tentacle Face here first. It looks a lot like Davy Jones from the Pirates of the Caribbean, or it looks a lot like a creature that one would describe like this. Quote, "It represented a monster of vaguely anthropoid outline, but with an octopus-like head whose face was a mass of feelers, a scaly, rubbery-looking body, prodigious claws on hind and forefeet, and long, narrow wings behind it." If you're familiar with your horror history, you'll know that Tentacle Face belongs to none other than the Lovecraftian nightmare Cthulhu, a name that I'm sure we're all vaguely familiar with, but might not know a whole lot about. So let's take a minute to talk about him. Cthulhu, created by author H.P. Lovecraft in his short story The Call of Cthulhu, is what's known as a Great Old One, a godlike entity that came from space and now sleeps under the oceans of Earth, waiting to be awakened. But not only does Fish Face fit what we see in Gary's little art project, listen to how the creator of Bird Box describes his monster.
There's a teacher who mentioned that a man would go mad, lose his mind, if he were to attempt to fathom infinity. It became like a monstrous concept to me, all right? So at some point, I started to think of infinity or something the human mind can't assimilate as a monster, and what if that idea was actually like personified? So on your front porch, infinity is on the porch swing outside swinging. Infinity is out there, and if you open the door...
Mind you, this interview is from way back in 2015, from the earliest days when his book started to get attention, and long before the author realized that he needed to be a bit more mysterious in the way that he talks about his story. So the monster, as he saw it in his original novel, was inspired by infinity. That's interesting considering that the main theme of the Cthulhu mythos is human insignificance when confronted with the idea of infinity. Look no further than the opening lines of Call of Cthulhu, which outlines this exact premise. Quote, "The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far." End quote. Now, if that still doesn't sound like it matches Bird Box, just wait. You see, in Lovecraftian stories, when humans come into contact with one of these infinite beings, like Cthulhu, they go mad. Their brains aren't able to comprehend the magnitude of what they're seeing, and they literally go insane. But it also doesn't apply to all humans. A subset of people become worshippers of the Old Ones, just like we see in Bird Box. To quote from Call of Cthulhu, they worshipped, so they said, the great old ones who lived ages before there were any men, and who came to the young world out of the sky. Someday Cthulhu would call, when the stars were ready and the secret cult would always be waiting to liberate him. And that's just Cthulhu. Lovecraft has a whole series of monsters in his bestiary that match the other drawings that we're seeing. Elephant face? That's a lot like the design of Shognar Fawn. Horny? Definitely close to the god servants named Night Gods. So we have creatures based on the concept of infinity that have massive size, match Gary's drawings, inspire cults of devoted worshippers, and possess faces that literally drive people insane. Monsters of the Cthulhu mythos match practically all of our requirements. Practically. You see, the Cthulhu explanation misses a few major marks. First, humans are to Cthulhu what insects are to us. Nothing. We can't be bothered. He's too busy living his best life under the sea alongside Aquaman and Ariel. That would explain why it shows no interest or urgency in opening doors in Bird Box, but Cthulhu also wouldn't be found chasing around a few humans on a 42-hour boat tour. It's just a waste of his, and quite frankly, most of the other Lovecraftian monsters' time. The bigger issue here, though, is the Bird Box creature's ability to harness the power of the dead. Up until this point, I've been dancing around one key issue here: the fact that the entity can mimic the appearance and voice of family members. And not just people it was responsible for killing either. In the opening moments of the movie, we meet and quickly lose a woman named Lydia. As she sees the monster, she calls out,
Mom? Please don't go. Please don't go.
The twist is that Lydia's mom has been dead for 5 years, long before this thing started attacking Earth. The movie doesn't bother to explore this, but to me, this is a huge detail that's critical for understanding the lore behind this thing. It's also critical to know that it's not restrained to mimicking just the dead. In an effort to trick boy and girl into removing their blindfolds, the entity mimics the voice of Mallory, our protagonist, who is still very much alive.
Girl, come with me. Take the blindfold off. Look at me.
So what's happening here? Well, before I tell you the other half of this theory, do me a favor and remove those blindfolds for just long enough to hit that subscribe button. We have a lot of other cool horror movie theories headed down the pipeline, so if you've enjoyed this one, which it seems like you have, making it this far, then subscribe to get notified of when we cover ways to defeat horror villains, like we did with Michael Myers not too long ago, or predict what's gonna happen in upcoming horror movies like Us, which is a theory that should be coming out in a couple weeks now. If you're interested, do me the favor, hit subscribe. It helps out the channel a lot. Thank you so much. And now, with that out of the way, let's finish this mystery up. While a Cthulhu-like monster seems to be the physical being that people are seeing here, where are these additional powers and motivations coming from? Well, there's strong evidence to suggest that these elements are inspired by the Rapture, the event in some Christian belief where the faithful, both living and dead, are taken up to meet Christ. To use the original Bible verses, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 16 and 17, quote, "For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God. And the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds, to meet the Lord in the air." Consider this. What if Lydia, calling out to her mom, is actually seeing her dead mother in the afterlife? And if Tom really is calling out to Mallory at the end of the movie, encouraging her to open her eyes and join him in the the afterlife. All of these souls seem to be caught up together, just like in the rapture, where they would be encouraging others who are worthy to join. If that was truly the case, and you have all these worthy dead people mixed up together like a big old yarn ball, it would be a beautiful sight, just like those left behind say that it is, despite their drawings suggesting otherwise. Speaking of those left behind, why are only criminals left behind on Earth? Well, because they didn't honor God's commandments and don't merit going up to heaven. They're not rapture material, you could say. And not only does it explain that, but this theory also gives clarity to a detail that's easy to overlook. Why these delusional prophets insist on opening the eyes of their victims instead of, just killing them. I mean, if the monster truly wanted these people to just kill off the rest of humanity, why wouldn't they just do it? Why resort to forcing their eyes open? It's so the victims can bear witness. In the Christian faith, a lot of emphasis is put on bearing witness to God's power. Isaiah 43 verse 10, "You are my witnesses, declares the Lord, and my servant whom I've chosen, that you may know and believe me and understand that I am he." Even Gary seems remorseful that he kills off Douglas without him getting to see the entity.
Sorry that you didn't get to see. It is beautiful. So beautiful.
How about the whole not opening doors thing? Revelation 3:20, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and eat with him, and he with me." And I hear you, I totally recognize the concern too. What about everyone taking their own lives? If this is a rapture situation, isn't that a cardinal sin of the church? Yeah, it is. Absolutely. However, this is possibly a rapture-like situation we're talking about. Maybe rapture rules are in effect. I mean, think about it. Typical depictions of the event are a bunch of bodies just kind of rising up to the heavens, but that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, does it? Maybe the real rapture is just those who are chosen answering the call to free their spirits by abandoning the flesh, and doing stuff like garbage truck hopping is the fastest way to do it. You may have also noticed the odd motif of pregnancy. You see it with Mallory, you see it with Olympia. Is it a coincidence then that when referring to the day of rapture, the Bible specifically refers to it coming on like labor pains to a pregnant woman? 1 Thessalonians chapter 1. "Now you do not need to have anything written to you about times and dates, brothers, for you yourselves know very well that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. When people say there is peace and security, destruction will strike them as suddenly as labor pains come to a pregnant woman, and they will not be able to escape." It's a weird coincidence, right? Now, obviously, there's an elephant in the room. Why would the blind be left behind during a rapture scenario? And yeah, the meek shall inherit the earth. I don't know, not a perfect theory. Like I said earlier, I don't think it's any one monster or one religious belief happening here. A rapturing Cthulhu, a literal octopus Jesus, is really the closest we can probably get. There's just a lot of weird specifications that this thing needs to fulfill, and in the end, it's really more like an original creation for the purposes of the story, which, I gotta say, is never a bad thing. What? People coming up with an original thought for a change? Go figure. And heck, at the very least, my explanation of an octopus Jesus today is way better than what they were gonna put in the movie. Yeah, that veiny reptile baby was an early version of the monster that got cut. I gotta admit, for as frustrating as not seeing the monster was, not seeing the monster was a whole heck of a lot better than that. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And if you want to see more horrific film theory action, click the box to the right to see how to beat Michael Myers. Or if you want to see something that's a bit closer to home, check out our series on Salad Fingers. It's the creepiest animated thing that you're gonna see today. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a few more endings that I gotta get in Bandersnatch. I'll see you next week.